Hey, what's up, guys? October, just gonna be horror all month. I'm showing Afton a few things. I'm doing a few videos. I've got some new to me stuff, some old nostalgia videos, and I've also got some weird little horror movies that you might not know that I suggest you watch. It's gonna be a fun one. I'm starting off with a movie that I've never seen, which may surprise a lot of you because it's a very well known movie, it's a popular movie. Hellraiser, 1987. Now, the reason I've never seen this is because I'm a reader. I've always been a reader, and as a reader, um, it takes a lot to pull me into a movie based off of a book, if I've read the book, and especially horror. Horror books just don't particularly translate well, except for Misery, of course, which was remarkable. Um, Occasionally, I guess I do like a horror flick based on a book, but it's pretty rare, and especially if I enjoyed the book a lot, I tend to not watch the film. So I loved um the Chronicle book that this movie was based on, so I just never got around to watching it until I did the other day. Now, this movie is basically just they took the parts of the book that are just about hedonism and they kind of just focused on that part, how it can end up being dangerous because most of the time when you allow yourself to just roll completely into what you think is pleasurable, it usually causes you pain in the end, which is accurate. So now that is part of the basis of the book, the story that it's based on, but the tale is more succinct and more horrific. But that's okay because this movie still in its own ways was horrific. Most horrific to me was how lust and what you think of as like a lustful desire can ultimately be detrimental to you, because even though it's obvious someone is a demon, obviously, people stick around, man. They really do. People stick around. And so the movie took that point out of everything and just harked onto it, which really did make it a watchable film based off of a story that I enjoyed. So I should have watched it a lot sooner. Dumbass me. So I think the story is the winner here. The story is well written. They translated it well to a script. So I thought that that part of it was awesome. The practical effects obviously were really good. The costumes of all the Cenobites are cool. Maybe a little bit silly in some ways, like the chattering teeth and stuff like that, kind of like silly. But it's still cool enough to bring you through the trip. The virtual effects at the time, it was kind of like right before they started doing CGI. And I remember the virtual effects had gotten like better and better and better and better and better and better. Then eventually they were replaced by CGI, which was just terrible, and it brought us all a step backwards. Now CGI eventually has surpassed what virtual effects used to be. But the virtual effects in this movie were reasonably good. I mean, they don't particularly look real, but when you're watching a movie and the story's good enough and everything's moving along good enough, it doesn't really need to look real. I've noticed that the same thing with like video games. As video games have progressed, if the story sucks and the gameplay kind of sucks, it doesn't matter. Just think this game sucks. And sometimes the old games that had terrible graphics, it was just blocks moving around on the screen. If the story was engaging, then it brought you along on this journey, and it didn't matter what the graphics looked like to us kids when we were little. It just didn't make a difference, you know, when you were playing Legend of Zelda or whatever. There was a cool story, so just reading blocky words on the screen with a little block character with a boop 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 that went out and poked enemies was good enough. Shadow, what, you getting hungry? Okay, I'll feed you in a minute. Okay. Don't poke my stuff. Calm yourself. So, the virtual effects, like I said, they're good enough. They bring you along on the journey that you want to be brought onto without, you know, sacrificing too much of your engagement with the movie itself. It does a little bit, but it's not overtly. So, the story is the big winner. It's a good story. The acting is probably the worst part of this movie, but it's still decent. It's just kind of, if you've ever seen a soap opera, it's kind of acted like a soap opera. So, it's not believable, you know what I mean? Like the way that people talk and the way that people engage with things just isn't really like believable. But the story's engaging enough to bring you along even though the acting isn't that good. The real problem for me, not enough Cenobites. You know, there's just not enough Cenobites. More Cenobites. So as I go into this a little bit further, I guess I'll watch the second one. I've heard it was better. I've heard it was worse. Everybody's got their own opinions, you know what I mean? I might save it for next Halloween because there's so many horror movies to watch. And I'm trying to watch a lot of the OG ones because this is my first time reviewing things, so I'm going to start with the firsts. As far as Hellraiser goes, I like Clive Barker's stories. I have enjoyed some of his movies. I did watch Lord of Illusions because the story I didn't like that much, and the movie I thought was pretty good. So, I'm going to give Hellraiser a 7. Obviously, every horror fan can enjoy it, but if you're not a horror fan, I can't really say that I would recommend it to you if you're not a horror fan. There are some horror movies that I think even non-horror fans should watch. Hellraiser's not one of them. But if you do enjoy horror movies and you've never seen this movie somehow, like me, or you're just starting to get into watching films for whatever reason, give this one a check. It is definitely decent for what they were trying to do. It's different than anything else. The 80s had a lot of funky shit going on, and I got more of that coming. Have a good night. Bye.